Hi everybody. Hello, welcome to Bead Table Wednesday. I'm gonna give people a few minutes to come on in. Actually, I'm gonna adjust my camera just a tiny bit. There we go. Hi. Welcome to Bead Table Wednesday. Hello guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to show you a fun project in just a little bit and show you some beads that I have. So I hope you'll enjoy today's episode. Hi Sharon, nice to see you here. All right guys, we're gonna wait a few minutes for some people to wander on over as Facebook lets people know that the video's live. So what are you guys doing for Bead Table Wednesday? You guys working on jewelry today? We're making beads like maniacs over here. So many beads. Because Bead and Button is a week away. Exactly a week away. Hi Melanie, nice to see you here. And I just never have enough beads made before Bead and Button, ever. I'm always working up until the last minute. That's just life. I can't help it. It's not that I procrastinate because I'm working all the time. It's just that you guys love my beads so much. It's hard to keep things in stock. So shows are always a challenge. I'm always working. That's the bad thing about polymer clay too, is that you can work up into the last minute, to the last hour before you have to take things out of the oven, right? So lots of bead making going on here. Jesse has trays and trays of beads. He's been drilling holes, and then I'm going to have him do some base coats of things before I put my little magic on it. And that's a nice thing about an assistant. And also, when you guys are working on your own jewelry, if there's things you can have someone do for you, go for it. Like if you are wrapping a bunch of beads or putting earrings onto ear wires before you do shows, you know, you can hire somebody to do that for a lot less money than what it costs you and your time to do. So don't be afraid to outsource things as a jewelry designer, especially if you got big shows coming up. I used to do that all the time around the holidays. I would hire neighborhood teenagers to come and put earrings on ear wires for me and put them on cards. So whenever you can save some time with an assistant with something that doesn't have to have your hands, I say go for it. And you can barter jewelry for people too. I've done that with my sister-in-law before. So my hair's like out of control. It's too big. Hello Cheryl, nice to have you guys here. All right, I got a super fun project for you guys today. I wanted to make some cool frames for some beads, for my lentil beads that I have, which is this shape of bead. And I came up with some really cool frames for that. And I'm sure you guys saw the picture preview today, which is this one. And the bead kind of turns around and you let gravity have it lay on your chest flat when it's laying on you. And so we're going to make these little wire frames today. They're super fun and easy. I know you're going to love the project. And I have a few different variations here that I did that I will turn my camera around and show you. And I think we'll just get started because there's a group of you here. And I know you'll want to see this project and give it a try for yourself. And Melanie, I can't wait to hear your super secret bead idea. I'm looking forward to that. So let me turn the camera around here. Oop. You guys don't want to see the back of my armoire. That's why I have everything in my studio is tucked away in armoires. Okay, let's get this situated a little better. It's a fidget spinner. You're hilarious, Melanie. These would work as a fidget spinner, but they kind of remind me of Hermione Granger's time turner. Remember that thing? How many times do I have to go back to give me another week before Bead and Button? That would be good. That would be a good magic trick. So there we go. This is what we're going to make today. I'm going to show you how to do the frames, and then I have some variations here on my table that let me spotlight those a little. Actually, I need to get this situated a little better. How's that? Yeah, that looks good. You have a time turner, Melanie? Does it work? Do you get to save all sorts of time and go back and fix things and do more than you can humanly possibly do in a day? I think that's the definition of a mom, but okay, so you saw the half circle that we're going to do in the project today, but I also have a really cute rectangle one that I used disc beads on, and I thought that was a really fun way to show off a nice little collection of my disc beads. And these are really fun. You know, if you're a nervous Nelly, these are fun to play with. All right, and then I really like this one. I think it looks very very modern with the triangle and a little the leaves are from Gardan, and I see Anne's here, so hello Anne. And Gardan Beans, she's going to have a trunk show June 1st, and so Gardan Beads, look it up. I'll have the link on the Art Bead Scene today too, and she does all these super great enamel leaves, and they just work so perfectly with Humblebeads. It's like she reads my mind, and so I really like this one. I think it just has a real trendy vibe to it with the triangle. Well, they kind of all do. But these are made with copper that I buy at the hardware store, so it's really inexpensive. Oh, and Anne, check out this one. I made this one. I'm going to finish it and make it into a necklace and wear it to bead and button. This birch pendant is from Anne from Gardan Beads. Is that awesome? I just love it to pieces. I think it looks fab with my branch disc bead with the flowers here. And I made a huge frame for it. So I'm going to add some chain to this and wear this to bead and button. Super excited about that. Hey Lynn, nice to have you here. Okay, so let's talk about wire for a minute. I'm going to clear these off my table. Well, actually, I'll just move this out of the way. You guys can see me here. All right. You're going to need your steel bench block. And of course, if you have a rubber block to deaden the sound, that's always preferable. They also make leather ones, but you could also just use a hand towel folded once or twice under your bench block to deaden the sound. Because if you're doing a lot of hammering, it can definitely be headache producing. And let's talk about wire. So this wire I buy at the copper I buy at the hardware store at my local Ace Hardware. I love those guys. I love they're a locally owned hardware store, so I'm super into supporting our local businesses in my small town. So if you don't have a local hardware store, you can just check out your big box hardware stores. But this is a 16 gauge wire, and you can also buy wire where they have jewelry supplies too, but it's much cheaper at the hardware store. So this is, oh, okay, Anne just left me a note. She said her trunk show is going to be this Saturday and Sunday, and I got some beads from her last trunk show, and so I highly recommend checking it out. Okay, 16 gauge copper wire, and hardware store wire is always going to be less expensive. And then this one is what I did with I used this big wire for the birch one that I did. So you can see, let me pull these up for you. You can see the difference in the size of the frames. So this is this 14 gauge wire, and this is the 16 gauge wire. So it just depends what kind of look you want to go for. And also the thinner wire, of course, is much easier to hammer than the big honkin' 14 gauge wire, which is really thick. In this kind of wire at the hardware store, sometimes you'll see, you can ask the guys for copper wire, and then sorry, I see a question. Kelly, I'm going to get you a question in just a second. The hardware store, sometimes the wire is wrapped in like a rubberized coating, because it's electric wire basically, and so you just cut off that coating, and then you'll have a big coil of like 5 or 6 strands of copper wire. And so for just a few dollars you can get a ton of thick wire. And it's the same wire that they use at the jewelry stores, so don't be afraid that you're getting some inferior quality of wire. It's exactly the same stuff. So Kelly asked, is copper wire the only wire that I buy at the hardware store? No, I also buy blackened steel wire at the hardware store, and then sometimes brass wire too. They don't have like the silver colored wires, galvanized silver, and it's just not a good enough quality. The blackened silver is fun to work with, but I wouldn't work with galvanized silver. I would go for sterling silver from the jewelry store instead. And then brass wire. Brass wire is much harder to hammer though, and copper wire is super soft and easy to work with. So that's one of the reasons that I chose to work with it today. Okay, so what you're going to need is a art bead that you want to use for this project. And since I'm all about art beads, of course that's what I want you to use, but you could also use a big stone or a glass bead. So Sharon had a question about the wire, and before I go on, I will say, yes, I do patina the wire, and actually after I hammer it is when I patina it, Sharon, and I'll remind you guys when I'm doing the step-by-step that that's when I do it. So back to the kind of beads. You can use an art bead. It doesn't have to be a lentil. It could be anything that has a, you know, that's thin and kind of flat on one side. So it could be an oval, it could be a square bead would be cool if you had a square bead, and it could be ceramic, lampwork, polymer clay, whatever you have in your stash. Pull it on out and make a frame for it. So what we're going to do is, for those of you who may have watched my videos and already know this about me, I don't do much measuring or scientific work. It's, you know, I eyeball things a lot. So one thing you want to do when you're starting out with your wire, and you have your flush cutters, so they're flat on one side, and I don't know if you can see, like, I don't know how good the quality is if you can see, but there's just a little point at the end of my wire from where it got cut, because this side does the bevel and this side does the flat. So you want to just cut off your wire first to start with so that you have a nice flat piece. And if your wire's bent at all, just take your pliers and bend it back so that it's not bent out of shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just use my hands a little to free form around an oval to get it started. And then I'm going to use my pliers and just finesse that shape a little bit more. And one thing I did for all of these is it's gonna, the hole runs through the center of the bead. So I didn't extend this past the bead, so it stops at the center of the bead. So as you're getting it shaped, you might want to just keep that in mind, that you're going for the center of the bead, not the top of the bead. Okay. So once I have my oval shape that I'm liking, I'm going to trim off the other end. And I'm actually going to cut this side because it's a little too long. Okay. Let me just give you a little safety tip too, because I didn't do it there. And so listen to me, don't do what I say. Whenever you're cutting pieces of wire, make sure you tilt your cutter down and cut so that it falls to the table and not across the room or in your eye. So keep that in mind. Okay, so that's what we're going for. Can you guys see that? Oops. Yeah, that seems like a Heather video. Here we go. So that's what we're going for. So you want it to go halfway around your bead, and the hole that you're going to be lining up is in the center of your bead. So you want the ends to end at the center of your bead, and that's the shape you're going for. As you hammer it, it's going to get a little bit bigger, so just keep that in mind. And I'm going to hammer. It's going to take me a few minutes, so if you want to turn your volume down, now's the time to turn your volume down. This is a ball peen hammer. Just this is a fancy one, but if you just have a basic one, all you need is the flat surface of your ball peen hammer. And when you hold your hammer, you don't want to hold it with your finger out like this. You want to hold it in the palm of your hand. And all the action should be coming from from your wrist. And I'm going to hammer all the way around here. Nice and evenly one time, and then I'm going to turn it over. And the reason you want to keep turning it, flipping it back and forth, is that it'll keep your wire from bending out of shape. So I've hammered one more time. I'm going to flip it over again. Now you can see this one's kind of starting to bend towards the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to hit it a few times, heading the opposite direction that I want it to go in. I don't want it to bend out of shape. All right, I'm going to flip it over again. You want to hammer nice and evenly. Now what you can do is you can pull your bead over here and see if it's getting out of shape at all, and if it is, just take a second to rebend it a little bit. You can see it started to spread out a little, so I just use my fingers to bend it in a little before it gets hammered too flat. There's going to be a point where it's really hard to bend, because the more you hammer a piece of wire, the harder it gets. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I'm liking the bottom shape of it, and so now what I want to do is, because you have to poke a hole on the ends for your wire to go through, I'm going to hit the end part of my wire so it will splay out flatter, and so that's what I'm going to do right now. Now one thing to keep in mind is you can hammer too much. So you don't want to have your little ends too flat, because if they get too flat, you can just hammer them until they kind of lose their strength and they bend really easily, and that will be useless to you. So don't over hammer them. You don't want them to be wobbly at the ends, so make sure you don't go too crazy at the ends. Okay, I'm digging that. I like the way it looks. Just want to make sure the two ends are even. And I'm feeling it. Yep, I'm liking it. Okay, so the last thing I do, this is a riveting hammer, and a riveting hammer has a tapered end on one side and a square end on the other. And the tapered end of your riveting hammer makes a really great texture. So I'm going to start in the center and work my way down. And I'm just going to flip it over and hammer it flat. Okay. The next step is a little flat file. If you don't have a flat file, maybe you're new to metalworking, this is just a really inexpensive flat file. You can pick it up at the hardware store. But you could also use a nail file or an emery board, like a, you know, the kind you do your nails with. And all you want to do is you're just filing off the jagged little end here, and you want to file in one direction. So you're lifting it up, filing, lifting it up, filing. You don't want to do sawing. So kind of like when you're doing your nails and you're going in one direction. And you just rub it on your finger. And if you don't feel anything catch on, then you know you're golden. Hi, Holly. Nice to hear you got your beads. Hope you love them. We were talking about you last night. You're gonna love this. We were flipping through the channels, and there was Mexican wrestling, and one of them had your last name. So you should know that a famous Mexican wrestler has your last name. We thought that was pretty funny since we just set your order out. Okay. Now, what I would do at this point is you can poke the holes now, or you can do it after this next step. I'm not going to do this next step, so just with your imagination, imagine that I did this. But what you want to do is take this over to your liver of sulfur and darken it. And I love to use extended gel liver of sulfur. So you just add a little bit to water, just a few drops of water. You can add a little bit right on a paintbrush and then just paint it right on, so you don't have to do a whole big batch of liver of sulfur. So the extended gel works really awesome. You can use just a tiny bit and paint it on. And so that's what I would do at this step, but for the sake of time, we're not going to do that. So what I'm going to do, this is a hole punch, 1.5 millimeter. So it's a thin one. I'm going to center this very carefully. Yep, very, very carefully. Okay, so it's centered on my piece of metal. Then you just press it like a hole punch. Then you got to wiggle it off because your wire's nice and thick. And there's my hole. Can you see that? So you definitely have to make sure your metal is hammered enough so that you can do a hole punch at the end of your wire. Okay, so there's my two holes punched into my wire. And this I would darken at this point, just like this is the difference between darkened and not darkened. So you can see here's the darkened piece, and then here's the not darkened piece. So it just adds a really beautiful patina to it, nice dark rich color. All that texture pops out more. And then after you patina it, you just take a little bit of steel wool and run it over to bring out some of the highlights of the raised metal. And that's with extra fine steel wool. So the next part, and I would also darken this copper wire at the same time, so keep that in mind. You could just take like you know, a big chunk of it and darken it at one time, so you don't have to keep doing that. Okay, now I have my lentil bead and my wire frame. And I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and make a simple loop. You guys all know a simple loop. Nothing fancy, just a simple loop. Just nice and easy. Okay. And I'm going to open it up and slip it onto my wire, the hole in my wire. And close it. That's how it starts. And now I have some little teeny tiny spacers that I'm going to use. And one of my favorite spacers are copper seed beads. I just love copper seed beads. They're really tiny, like the size of like a, even smaller than 2 millimeters, like a 1 millimeter bead. Just really teeny tiny. Oh, actually I want to do my square beads first. And then I have some little tiny electroplated Hishi beads that are square, and they have like a copper finish on them. So I'm going to start with 2 of those, and then I'm going to add my seed bead, my little tiny seed bead. So I have two square beads and then the tiny little seed bead. You can use whatever spacers you'd like. At this point, there's not any hard or fast to roll. I do like to use a little round bead next to the hole, just because it, if I had the square bead next to the hole, you would see a little gap where the hole is on the lentil bead. Okay. Let me get this going in the right direction. Now I can see, I'm going to spread this out just a little bit so that I can add my beads to it. Okay. So if you didn't see that, you can adjust the wire frame a little bit at this point still, and I just pulled it with my fingers to open it up a little so that there was enough room for my spacer beads that I wanted to put on here. And this wire, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you guys, I'm using 18 gauge wire, and since copper wire is soft, I wanted to use a little bit of a heavier duty gauge. I had a piece of lint on my finger if you were wondering what I was doing. So I want to use a little bit heavier of a gauge, so that's the 18 gauge wire that I have here. And now I'm going to cut this part so that I can do my loop. And this loop, we'll see how it works on camera. I kind of fought with the loops every time, so we'll see how it goes. What I did for this side, and hopefully it works out. If not, we'll just go with the backup plan. But I did this wire, I bent it the opposite direction of the first wire. So the first wire was going backward, and now this one is going forward. And that's because you have to get this wire finagled through this little hole, and it's not an easy task. So what I'm going to do, and I don't recommend this for any other jewelry technique, but you got to get it through the hole. So I'm actually going to open up my loop the wrong way, which is outward. You know, you're only supposed to open loops side to side. Well, this one I've had to open up a little to put it through the wire and then close it. So it gives you kind of a little bit of a funky look on one loop, but you got to get it in there. Then you just fix it up a little. Maybe there's a more brilliant way to do that. Maybe someone could leave a comment if they know a better way. But that's how I worked it out. Okay, I'm just going to use my pliers to straighten out the two sides. Make sure it looks good on both sides. And I'm liking that. Just gonna bend this wire a little. Okay. So there it is, my wire frame on my bead. And then, where's my tray of goodies? Oh. Here's all my gorgeous beads from Anne. I bought some of these, and then Anne gifted me with a really beautiful tray of beads. So this is some of the deliciousness from Anne from Gardan, and her trunk show is going to be Saturday and Sunday, so check her out. And so she has all sorts of different kinds of leaves that you can use, and I like kind of this triangle shape, you know, something a little geometric, so I'm going to use that one. And I have a 8mm jump ring there. You need 2 pairs of pliers to open and close jump rings. Okay. So I'm going to open this up, slip on the leaf. Oop. Glad that didn't fall on the floor. That would be so me. Okay. So I slipped it on there, and then I'm going to slip it on my piece. And remember, I would definitely darken this wire before I added the beads to the piece of wire. So take the time out and go darken your wire before you add your beads to it. But for the sake of the show today, it's not darkened. Hi Christine, nice to see you here. So there's the leaf added onto the bottom. And now for my chain, I have two little teeny tiny jump rings that are like 4mm, and then I have this copper chain. You can use any chain that you have. Now, one of the things you want to think about when you're cutting your chain is you want these to lay, you have to think about how you want it to lay on you or your customer. And so, did I just get that tangled up? Surprisingly, I did. Okay, so what you want to do is make sure you either have it above your lady lumps or below. Right? You hear me, girls? So you want to either have a super long chain or a chain that's, you know, like say 20 or 22 inches, or you're going to go down like 30, 32, 34 inches. So you want to make sure that either it's going to go up or below the girls. Okay? So keep that in mind, because, you know, it's not going to lay right and your little pieces are going to be flipping around. So just keep that in mind when you're cutting your chain. I did some of these really long and some of them really short. Well, not really short, but like a 22 inch. And I'm just going to try to untangle this real quick. Excuse me for just 1 second while you guys all laugh. Right? We always have to be worried about those lady lumps and how our jewelry is going to lay on them. Okay, sorry about this, guys. Just 1 second. There we go. Okay, so you can see like this chain that I did for my necklace, super long. I want to say it's probably like maybe it's really far down. So maybe 36 inches, 32. I'm not sure. I'd have to measure it, but keep that in mind. Okay. Now to put on the chain, you're going to open your little jump rings. And you always want to open jump rings side to side. So you're always twisting them side to side. Put your chain on first. Okay, so you're going to slip on your chain. And then you're going to attach it to the back loop. Can you see how I did that? I attached it through the loop of the bead, but on the back of the frame. So the chain's attached to the back of the frame. And then I'm going to close up my loop with my 2 pairs of pliers. Okay, and I'm going to repeat on the other side. So you're just going to open this up, slip on the chain so you're not fighting with it later trying to get it on the jump ring. And then you're going to go to the back of your frame and slip it through the loop on the back of the frame. And then close your pliers. I mean, your jump ring with your pliers. Okay. And that's your design right there. Love it. So fun, so easy. So you can get really creative with the shapes. You can see I did the rectangle and put in the disc beads, and I did little spacers in between each of the disc beads. Or you can do the triangle, which I really love the look of the triangle one. And I put a little oak leaf on the bottom of the triangle to match the leaves that I have on there. And then this one was with the really thick wire. So the wire I used today was 16 gauge, and this is the 14 gauge wire. Works exactly the same. It just takes a lot more hammering to hammer the 14 gauge wire. Okay, so that's that. So I know you guys heard me talking about bead and button earlier, and so I'm going to show you guys a little preview of the beads that I've made for bead and button. So let me take you over here, and this is just, we have so many more beads made, but this is what we have started so far. I have all these cute little owls. Love these little guys. And then acorns, birds to match, and then I need to make more lentils now because I know everyone's going to want those. So I have some lentils, and then over here you can see I kind of work in themes. So here, this is like all woodland stuff. So I did leaves and little birch logs that go underneath my birds, and then I have these cute little sets that are new. They're ravens with little tiny willow leaves, and then lots of disc beads, and then more birds, more discs. So that's what I have so far finished. We won't talk about my bead table full of trays of unpainted beads. Did you guys ever watch Raising Arizona? And so instead of unpainted Arizona, we have unpainted Humblebeads. So I will be making lots and lots of beads for Bead and Button between now and next week. I have graduation. My youngest is graduating this weekend, so we'll be throwing in graduation too. And I cannot wait to see you guys at Bead and Button. If you're going, definitely stop by and say hello to me. And please introduce yourself to me, because I only see you this big and I may not realize it's you. So make sure to say hi and introduce yourself to me. And hopefully I will be in my booth and not out shopping. Right, Erin, you're going to keep me out of trouble this time. Or in trouble, maybe. So, I know, graduation, it's so bittersweet. My youngest graduating from high school, and then they're all moving out at the end of the summer. That'll be weird. So, Bead and Button, I'm really, really looking forward to you guys coming. Definitely say hi to me. Come see all the new stuff that I have. I will have tons more new stuff by next week. And thanks for joining me for Bead Table Wednesday. And then after the show, I'll be listing whatever is left over, probably in my VIP Humblebeads group as well. I'll be showing off those. And if you make this project, I want to see it. So show it to me if you give it a try and make one. And Erin, you are a really great shopper. Erin, Roseanne, and I are the worst at Bead and Button, because one will find something and then they'll come back to the booth and show us, and then we'll all have to go buy it. It's a terrible cycle. What can we do? It's our skills. All right, guys, I'm going to go finish making beads for the day. I hope you have a great Bead Table Wednesday. Definitely show me this project if you work it up. I would love to see what you make. And you guys have a great week. And I won't be seeing you next week because I will be busy packing up. But I'll see you guys after Bead and Button after the show. Take care. Bye, guys.